Hello, this is Tamara Caulder Richardson, and I am the host of the Seeking Heaven channel. And we are back. And today's guest is Jim Bubba Bay, and we are talking about last time. Please watch the first episode where he talks about his spiritual journey, things that happened in his life. It's just amazing how he kept saying this prayer over and over. Boy, I think that was his saving grace, not even really realizing what was about to happen to him, how his close to death, death experience of a horrible accident and where he was left off to die and what was going through his head. And then he's going to pick up the story from here because this is, and still buy his book below. You do have the link, but we're going to hear the rest of this. Okay, so you're back. I
back.
want to hear the rest
Have me
of
back.
this. So you're laying on this log. You made it there because you didn't want to be lost your body. You thought you were going to die, and you wanted your parents to be able to find your body because you went on your nightly walk and fell down below. Now you're all messed up. You're laying, I don't know how, with all these broken ribs and your spine and a massive head injury with your skull exposed. I don't know how you did it. So you somehow go up this hill, you're on this log, and you're laying there, and you say you lay your head down. Are you really waiting to die at this point?
Yeah, yeah. I was content in dying. I was done. There was no hope for me. My hope and everything in me was just done. I was done. I used all the energy. All my energy was gone just to get up the hill. And I know it's going to sound crazy, but it felt like a big accomplishment to make it to the log. It was like, woohoo, I made it, And I know it sounds crazy, but it really was. It was like that was
Sure.
my goal, to make it to this log. I didn't know it was a log, but make it to the road, and I ended up being this log,
Right.
which is a really key to the whole story, to the whole events that night. And I ended up yeah, I was done. I wasn't dead, like I said in the last one. I never totally died, but
But
I was
you were
I,
bleeding. You were
yeah,
losing
oh
a
yeah.
lot of blood.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a 4.5 inch crack in my head. My head's indented now, but thankfully I got a good head of hair. But I don't care, if people saw it.
Oh, well,
I actually got my hair. A funny story is I got my hair cut short, and the hairdresser said, "Wow, you got a scar here." She goes, "You probably got one of those stories that you hit your head on a coffee table as a little kid." And then I said, "No, it's a
um,
little more involved than that." And I laughed. And she's like, "Really?" So I ended up telling her the story. I got a little 5 minute condensed version of it, not to waste people's time and. So, but anyway, yeah. So I was content in dying. I just, the death door was there, and that was my only option.
so what
My only
happened?
option.
How were you eventually found?
So I closed my eyes, and so I'm laying on this log, and I'm just waiting to take my last breath. And it's funny, in the book, this little part of the book, my friend and I, Mickey, which the amazing thing about the book is that he's my best friend from high school. He lives in Bangkok, Thailand at the time, but he came home and we saw each other in a cemetery of all places, and we got together. And he hadn't seen me since I got hurt, and we started talking. I said, "Oh, I got this," and he's a really great author, and so we ended up combining to do the book. And so what was cool, halfway across the world, most of the book was written because he was there and I was here. That's the powerful thing in the internet.
Wow.
But we were trying to figure it out, and I was trying to explain at this log thing, this moment. And I said, what happened was, and all of us experienced this as kids. But do you remember when you overslept and your mom and dad turned your bedroom lights on, and there was like lights on the outside of your eyes, and it made you open
Yeah.
your eyes?
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened at the log. That's exactly what
Oh.
happened. So all of a sudden I got this like, you know, searing like eye light, on my eyes, and it made me open my eyes. And of course, to see what I saw had never entered my mind, never, entered my mind. And there it is, the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life. It just was there.
What
And
was it? What were you saying?
well, it's true for me. I was seeing different colors and all that, and it just lit up the whole valley. Everything got, and it got brighter and brighter and brighter. And as I was laying there, it just, my eyes were like, I was in awe. I was in awe of just this, the brightness of this light and the colors. And coming towards me is this
Mm-hmm.
grandfatherly figure.
Oh gosh. Okay. Go ahead.
So I ended up, so it was just incredible. It was like, I just laid there, and I was like in awe, and it came closer and closer and closer. And I'm like, remember now, I'm thinking I'm dying. So I'm like, wow, I didn't know this. Of course, I never had the opportunity to try to go to heaven before, if I'm going to heaven. But I literally said, in my own mind, what little bit I could think, I'm like, well, I guess, is this the way they go to heaven? I didn't know. I said, okay, well, I was confused. I was like, I don't know. It seemed pretty traumatic, or dramatic and everything to me, that this is how you go to heaven. And maybe I was in heaven. I didn't know. I didn't know. But I was still in the log. The log was there. I was laying on it. And it came closer and closer. And then behind him, to like the left of him, so I'm looking at him, I'm facing him. To my left, my kids show up.
Oh dear.
Robert and James.
Oh my goodness.
And then I'd still get I just got goosebumps. And then I got real confused a little bit. And then I'm looking at what's going on. And then I'm like I said before, I don't care if you believe in heaven, they're going to be there, because they didn't have time to do much, bad or like that to do there. So I'm like,
They're
okay,
just innocent children.
they're just there, innocent, and they're the way I remember them. It's not like they grew up. Robert's 20. You know what I mean? It's the age. I forget how much Robert would be. Well, it was in 09. He was born in 87. So whatever that 13, he'd be 22 then. But it's kind of like what I remember. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
But they were there.
Okay.
But then I started, like, you start doubting yourself. You're like, whoa, I'm seeing some stuff here. This ain't too, you know what I mean? So you have
Right.
a little doubt.
It shakes
So
your reality. Yeah.
yeah, it's like that. So, and then they came a little closer, and then the next thing out, the figure was there, and it was just the most gorgeous person I ever met, and I ended up being God. Now, people say you can't see God, and the only reason why I say I saw God, and I don't know, it could have been, God talking through Jesus's body, because I don't know. I'm not. I'm just Jim Bubba Bay from Pine Plains, New York, landscaper, metal detector guy, gas station guy, coach. That's just me, and so I'm not an expert in any of this, So I'm sitting there, but that figure to me said, "My son Jesus," and I'm like, why would they say, if it was Jesus, why would he say, "My son Jesus"? So that's why, so some people argue with me and say, oh, you can't see God, so it can't. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, either way, it was Jesus or God. I don't care whoever you want to say. But and another thing is which would lead into some other things, is my spirituality at that time was tiny. You could fit it on a grape. My understanding
Great.
was
Look at it. That's
my
tiny.
yeah, it was tiny. It wasn't like I was against anything, but I just did my mental detecting and worked, and and I got 4.0 in college, so it's not like I'm not intelligent, stuff like that. It just wasn't what I explored or talked about or did. There wasn't a reason other than this prayer Jabez. It's and saying prayers for people that needed prayers. I didn't do anything. I didn't go to church. I didn't do anything spiritually either. So anyway, I'm bringing that up because what showed up to me as God is what I understood and what I needed. You've had it 6 times, but you might agree with me. If Mary Sue, an orb might show up for Mary Sue, or just light, because they can understand it. If an orb or light showed up for me, I'd be dead right now, because I would have no clue or understanding what was happening. Great. So the only way I needed, the only way it was going to happen for me is I had to see this grandfather figure. And I know it goes all the way back from when I did go to Sunday school for a little while. And that's what you're taught is, and God could be a woman. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but this is what showed up to me, because that's what I was going to understand. It could show up to anybody, anything else.
I think you're right. It's like when I saw, you think, when I saw in my near-death experience, angels and family, even though I didn't know them as family, but yet I kind of knew they were. It was strange. But when I saw Jesus, I knew who he was because my grandmother talked about him. But if I had, Buddha or someone showed me, that would mean nothing to me. You
Right.
know what so
Right.
I think they send you a familiar face or
Right.
something encouraging, or if
Right.
they sent some kind of alien being, I would be really confused.
Right.
I think they know, like, I'm not making it less, but I'm saying they send. I agree with you. I think they send
Well,
you to the experience that you need to fulfill your spirit at
right.
that
Right.
moment,
Right.
keep you
And,
going.
and I'm going to fast forward a little, just quick, because it's going to mean something. I was doing a book event. A book club read my book, and because I do inspirational speaking and everything, and so they read my book and they wanted me to come speak about the book. And this woman had because my kids are in my kids that died. They're all in the book. It's a flashback book, and they're because I did think of my kids so it's all there. So anyway,
It's so
this
beautiful.
woman read my book, and she said she would never read a book about kids dying ever in her life. And she read my book and came up and thanked me because my book helped her with her healing from her kids dying. But anyway, while I was doing the speech, she's the one that told me. It's funny how God works. Now, this is years later. I wrote the book. It's out. This all happened. I'm living life, kind of doing my thing. And she ended up telling me that made me realize that my kids, Robert and James, are going to be there the night I fell. And they had a job. And one of their jobs, destiny, was to be there the night I fell so that I could think that this figure came from heaven. You get what I mean? I
I
had
do.
said all along,
I
I
do.
don't care what I
Because
am. I knew my
you
kids
knew they would absolutely 100% be there.
in heaven. So
And
this,
so
this,
you knew they're in heaven. That's got to be God.
yeah. So they came from heaven.
I got it. I totally
So,
get that. Yeah.
so
Thank
anyway,
you for that.
so to go back to the thing. So I'm there and I'm like in awe. Now I'm going to tell you, the blood didn't stop flowing. The pain didn't. Obviously the pain was all there, right? But I was in such awe. It was almost like my brain didn't even think about any of that stuff. I was
Oh,
just blown away
wow. That's
that
deep.
so it didn't he didn't sit there and stop the pain, stop the blood, none of that. But I was
Mhm.
just so much in awe that I my brain couldn't. That's all I thought about. So in the process, so then we had a conversation, not like you and I. It was within. You know how I don't know if you've been that, but that's the way it
Right.
happened with
Mind to
me.
mind, real
Yeah,
quick
mind to
stuff.
mind kind of thing.
Mhm.
So to go back, anybody, if you had, and I had said it in the last segment we had, if you had one of your biggest questions, your doubts in life, I don't care whether it's like the school, I doubt the sky is blue, and that was your biggest doubt. And if you meet God, don't you think you're going to get that answer, right? If all through life, that's one of your biggest questions. So what was mine? I said in the one before, how can the Bible be God's word from all that death, all that dying? So
Yeah.
guess who answered it? And the way it was answered, and I wrote in the book, and it's this is the gist of it, is that God let me know, like, haven't you noticed that you know like the Romans, they took a part of God, and they use it. Basically, man uses it for themselves to put themselves in power, and they use it for power.
Yeah.
But do you notice that they don't last forever? They go out of power.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So but to this day, what's still there? Bible and God.
Right.
So it's man's interpretation of the Bible that 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 that's where the disconnect is. It's if they use it for their own power, and they use it for because I was upset with all the killings about even the scientists, and like that, and they're killing the scientists. None of that needed to be done back in the day, but that's what they did. So anyway, so that's what. But and what's still now, God God in the Bible. Now nowadays I see churches are closing and all that stuff. But remember what I told you, and this is always, I believe this from now, before I got hurt till even now, is you could be with God anywhere. Like
Absolutely.
what about those poor farmers that I work 6 days a
Mm.
week, and I can't even go to church now because I work Sundays and stuff like that. But it doesn't stop me from being with God, and so
Mm-mm.
you could be anywhere. Anywhere with God. You
Right.
could be
You
in your
can be
car, anywhere.
anywhere. God is in us. God is in this world. God is not just in heaven. God is with us everywhere in
Yeah,
nature, everything.
everywhere.
I mean, that's
Everywhere.
why my granddaddy used to say that he'd say, I'm not much in a church because in the South, they wanted you to participate in activities. And he's kind of quiet. So he didn't want a whole bunch of activities filled up on his schedule to go to. But he said, no, he would work. And when he had a mill, men's socks, small mill,
Right.
that they would work in. And he said he would sit there and talk to God working on his socks.
Yeah, yeah. So, so we had a conversation. I did include some of it in the book, some of it's, kind of private and simple, but I included that's one of the big ones there, and then I'm like, okay. And then I still was like, okay, I guess we're going to heaven kind of thing, I mean, it kind of, I still, wasn't 100% sure, and then he's like, I got things to do for him. I'm not going.
Really?
I'm
So he
not.
gave you,
Yeah,
he said, you got to
yeah,
stay. Did you say,
yeah. He
am I
told me.
going with you?
Yeah, he
And
said, you got things to do for me and listen to my word. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So, but here's the key to the whole thing. And this is where people go, every story, especially the ones that happen, these accidents or these things happen, incredible things happen to people. There's always an aha moment like, okay, how can that be? And it's like, okay, I believed in all these stories and these people that get hurt all by themselves or whatever, and they got to do these incredible things to go get help is incredible stuff.
Mhm.
So anyway, why God is there? I'm laying on this tree, as I had said before. Well, because he's there. Remember, it was the dark. It was pitch black, and now it's lit up. Do you know those trees that have like no bark and branches? They almost look like telephone poles. They kind of lose their
Yeah.
bark, and they're kind of like that. That's
Yeah.
what I was laying on. I was able to discover the kind of
Oh.
log I was laying on. Now it's a real key story. It's really key to the whole thing. So I'm laying on this log. I'm able, of course, I can't turn my neck; it's broken, but I still can see. Okay, I'm kind of moving a little bit, and I'm like, okay. And I don't know why I look, but I look. That's what I'm laying at. So I don't know how long I was with God. I tell people that when I was at that log, my spirituality, of course, I had none at the time. I had a grape, right? And everything, everything that I was there, my everything was zero. My hope, my will to live, everything was zero. Do you know like a plane driving through the air, like the big planes for the military, and a big tanker comes along with the fuel, and they hook up to you and they fill the plane up, and then they continue on their way in their flight, and the tanker goes
Yeah.
back. That's what God did for me. He filled my hope up, my
Oh,
desire to live up. He kind of filled me up with this. Okay, because here's the key.
so
He's
beautiful.
like, okay, yep. We had this conversation. Like I said, it could have been. I tell people it was like, and it was only as long as I needed. It was not a second longer, not a second early. God gives you what you need and only what you need, and that's what it was. And I can't tell you how long it was, but it was simple, right?
Yes, it sounds
So
beautiful.
so he goes, so then we're done talking, and the mind to mind thing, and he turns and they go back. And I never talked to my kids, but I didn't need to. That was the whole idea. I didn't need to. They were just there. And basically, it was like a light getting smaller and smaller. And then all of a sudden, the candle lit got blown out. And now it's pitch black again. The pain is like ridiculous. Got to remember, I'm bleeding more because I don't know how
Oh,
long this took, but I'm bleeding. And I ended up sitting there. And next thing you know, and then it dawned on me. Now, got to remember this. I didn't talk to God. He didn't tell me what to do next. I'm like, okay, I'm on this log. I'm all this. And he never said what to do next. So then I know it's going to sound symbolic or whatever like that, but I was able to turn a little bit and I saw this little light in his house. And the credible thing is where I went, they weren't home when I fell. They came from New Jersey, ended up being my neighbor's house. She was in New Jersey, and if that woman went to the bathroom one more time on the way home, I wouldn't be here right now. It's amazing God's timing. So when I
yeah.
fell, no one was home. She wasn't home. She just drove 4 hours from Jersey to get home. So she got home while I was in the whole culvert.
Okay.
So she puts a little light on in her one room. I look up enough to see this little light, and I said, that's where I got to go. I know it's symbolic and it's crazy, but that's what I said. So then I'm like, okay, that looks like miles. When you got that much damage to your body, it looked like
Oh,
so far away. So I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to make it crawling. I'm bleeding too much. So some of this stuff, I was like, okay. So I said, I got to get up. Well, I kind of got myself up, kind of hunched over, and I fell right back down because gravity took over on all those broken bones. Remember, I've been always laying on the ground, so the
yeah.
ground kind of was like a stretcher. Now I'm trying to stand up, and
Oh my God.
gravity on the bones is so the pain. I thought I was in pain doing all what I did. Then I tried to stand up. It was just ludicrous. It was just ridiculous. So I fell back down, and then I know God said I had things to do for him and all that stuff. And then I doubted it. I doubted even, and I said to myself, though, if I get up one more time, I got to stay up. There's just I can't do it. Keep getting up and down, getting nowhere. So I don't know, but and that climb, people say on that climbing the hill thing, like angels and stuff. No, that was all me. At the bottom, me thinking like that, but the climbing part, that was all me. There was no angels picking me up. That was as painful can be.
I
And
hear
then I
you.
got to there. So then I got up, and I ended up getting up, and I ended up staying up. I said I can't get any down. So I ended up walking to my neighbor's house. It ended up being my neighbor's house. I never met her. I only waved to her. Hi, neighbor. Remember, I just moved in, I don't know, a
Oh
year.
my gosh, that's crazy. Okay,
So,
what a way to meet your neighbor. Probably scared the heck out of her.
well, there you go. So I ended up doing the Hunchback of Notre Dame shuffle, we called it. I just shuffled my feet on the road. I couldn't even pick them off the ground, basically. Now,
Amazing.
why I'm still living is my legs aren't broken. So that saved my life. The fact that my legs weren't broken, right?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
had cuts and stuff like that, but they weren't broken. So I ended up shuffling my feet. Every shuffle, every step, everything I moved, my whole body shook, and the pain just was through the roof. Someone at one of my speaks said, "How much pain were you in?" And I said, "Well, this isn't technical, really the truth." But I said, "Have you broken a bone?" And they said, "Yeah, they broke one bone." I said, "Well, multiply that by 26 times because I had 26 fractures."
That's what I'm
And
saying. I can't imagine. You must have been a little bit like in an altered state and like total survival mode.
yeah, yeah, part of that's how I lived. I really, because some of the
Yeah.
non-believers say, "Oh no, you can't." But what I love about talking to non-believers and they talk to me is I'm like, okay, you're saying that I did it myself. I'm saying I had help. So you're making me more awesome than I'm saying I am because you're saying I did it all myself, like I did this awesome thing. So it's great. So either way, they can't come back and argue with me very much, and I'm okay. You don't believe me, you don't believe me. I'm okay. I'm here, right? And my blood and my cell phone were in the hole, and I knocked on my neighbor's door. How I got there, you can decide whether you believe me or not. But
So
either
what
way, I did it.
so what happened? Did she answer immediately or when did you have to walk up steps too?
So no, so I got to this lawn, right? Now remember, I was shuffling on a blacktop kind of road, and I got to this lawn, and I swear you would laugh if you went and looked at this lawn now. It's got to be the smallest little tiny hill up to the front door. That thing was like Mount Everest to me. That little hill, it was like, holy cow. Now I just climbed that hill, but I was on my arms and I was kind of laying on a kind of stretcher, walking my way up the hill. Now I'm
God.
vertical and everything's screaming. So I got this little hill of this lawn and I had to climb this little hill of this lawn. And it was like it was ridiculous. It was like Mount Everest. But I knew I had to get there, so I was that close now. So I got to her thing and I had to get up on a step. It's crazy too. I had to get up on this like step thing, and I knocked on her door. I don't even know if I had a ring bell. I might be in the book. I mean, but I either knocked on her door and ring the bell,
Oh
and
yeah.
she's inside, and uh, and then she wrote in. What's cool? I asked her to write in the book her story.
Yes.
People in the book fill in the parts of the book that I don't know or didn't experience. So she wrote for the book, which is great because it fills in all of her side. But basically she was making lunch for going to work for Monday, and she plays the radio loud, and she thought I was talking at the door, and she thought it was her radio comes in and out, makes two stations come in, and she thought another station was coming in on the radio, and it was me outside her door
Uh,
asking for help, and
okay.
she thought it was just her radio making two radio stations come in. So she
Okay.
didn't come to the door right away. And then she went over and adjusted or went over to the radio and then realized someone was at the door. And just like you said, I asked her to write for the book after the fact. When she opened the door, it was like Freddy Krueger was in the neighborhood. That's how bad I was.
Could you speak? Could you talk?
I did. I taught. Some of this stuff is still incredible what I did. So I was like, I don't know whether I said, "Can you call 911?" or she said 911. Anyway, so she was like, "Oh my God!" She recognized me as her neighbor.
Oh, she knew you. Okay.
All through all the blood, or yeah, she kind of
Wow.
recognized me,
Okay.
like, "Hey, this is the guy up the road." And then she's like, "Oh my God!" So she ran to get the phone. That was it for me. I was done. I did my job, right? I knocked on the door. She came. I talked to the woman, and so I passed out. I collapsed on the lawn. So
Oh
she
my
come back
God.
down looking
Oh
for
my
me. She came back down looking, like, okay, he's going to be standing there, and I was gone. She said, I was like disappeared. She was like, and then she saw me laying on her lawn. So I would pass down on her lawn. I was going in and out the rest of the night. I was on her lawn. I was in, in kind
Yeah.
of like in and out kind of thing. So she calls 911. Some of the little bits and pieces I can remember. I know it's crazy, some of this stuff. So she
Mhm,
calls
mhm.
911 and she didn't know I had head injury. She had no idea yet. And I to this day I hear her voice. She turns around my head and she goes, "Oh my God, he's got a head injury." So they tell her 911 to go get a towel, a clean towel, and put it on my head. And so she did that. So she went and got a clean towel and put it on my head. And then she was talking to them, and then they started coming. It's incredible, the whole thing. So they started coming, and a little side note that's not in the book, but the two people that came, our place has two ambulances. One of them hit a deer. The other ambulance was going to take a patient to one of the hospitals. So there was no ambulance at our local volunteer firehouse. The other paid paramedics were coming too, but from further away. This couple were at the firehouse, and the 911 call comes in, and they're like, they didn't know what they were going to do. So they, like old school doctor, they took a black bag and threw everything in the back bag they could think of, eye patches, all this gold, threw it all in the bag, and they hopped in this brush truck, fire truck thing, and they drove to where I got hurt, and they were the first ones, on this, first paramedics on the scene, and they just, yeah, so they showed up, and then, but why? After she hung up the phone, not to go 911, she hung up a 911. This is nuts. This is crazy. She says, "Is there anybody I can call?" And I'm like, "Yeah, call my brother." This is nuts that I could think of this stuff. Call my brother, and I gave her the number to call. Right, the business line. Right, she calls, and she says it's an answer machine. Well, it makes sense. It brings into their home. Sunday night, are you going to answer? I'm not saying my brother never does, but usually you take
Yeah,
care of business Monday, right?
sure.
It can wait till Monday morning.
Yeah.
So she hangs up and says, "No, it went to an answer machine. What I got to do?" And I said, I gave her my brother's private number that
I
no
can't
one
believe
knows.
this with a head injury. This is blowing my
I
mind. I can't
I
believe
gave
this.
her I gave her the private number, and I said, "Talk to the answer machine." I said, "You got to talk to the answer machine." So sure enough, she dials a private number that not many people know, and she talks to the answer machine. And my brother answers, and my brother came so fast. Meanwhile, my brother came so fast. He's like 3 miles away. Came, saw me. My mom and dad are next door at my house now. Remember, and fire trucks are starting to go down the road. So my mom and dad go on the back deck and think somebody has a chimney fire. They're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, somebody has a chimney fire." No, that's horrible. That's horrible. Meanwhile, it's all meant for me, their son. So my brother runs up the hill to his house. He owns his house, and he basically almost broke down the front door trying to get my parents. Meanwhile, my cousin Rich, at the time he's retired, but he was a sheriff on the road. Then he ended up being a private investigator for him, detective, and he was with a recruit like 2 towns over. They patrol this area, but they didn't need to come. Something told them 911. A call came in. It was slow where they are, and he said, "Well, let's drive to go see. Let's go there." So my cousin shows up. He came within feet of me, and had no idea it was me. That's how bad I was wrecked. And so he goes back to the car. My brother had got my parents. My brother comes back. He meets my brother at the road. He said, "John, what are you doing here?" And he said, "That's Jim over there." And my first cousin had no idea it was me. Had no clue. That's how bad I was.
That's how bad. Oh,
So they ended up, and so it ended up being real foggy that night. I didn't know. So I was hurt so bad they called for a helicopter, but the helicopter couldn't fly. It was too foggy. So they had to load me in an ambulance, and it took an hour and something to get me off the lawn. I screamed and yelled, and every time they tried to put me on the backboard, and that ambulance ride was ridiculous painful. I almost checked out twice in that thing, even though God told me, "Hey, you got things for me to do." I could not handle the pain no more. It was just so, and they were talking to me, trying to keep me. And then I saw the first couple that came. I wish I had talked to them before the book came out, because they would have added to the thing. But they used everything in that whole bag to stop my blood. And the wife, I forget, his name is Zach, the husband. I forget the wife's name. And with my brain injury, I kind of forget names. And she kneeled by my head the whole time to keep me awake and to try to help stop my bleeding. And she said that when they left, I bled so much that her pants became like she was kneeling in knee pads. That there was so much blood in her pants that she had to throw them away and everything. But it was like she kneeled in my blood the whole time I was there. And then I bled so much, and it's kind of nice of the fire department. They had to get buckets of water, and they cleaned off the lawn for my neighbor so she wouldn't have to come out and see my blood all over her lawn.
oh
And
my gosh. That's just, I mean, this must have really, I mean, not only shaken up your family, but shook up the whole neighborhood.
yeah, it was bad. And then that HIPAA law and stuff like that. They don't share anything. But Zach went home because his father is a good friend of ours. Went home and said, "If you're going to do any praying tonight, pray for Jim Bay." That's all he said. He couldn't share any details, but he went home and told his father, "You're going to pray for anybody, pray for Jim Bay, because he ain't going to make it." Then they loaded me in an ambulance, and they had to drive. And my cousin was going to do it if you fell or anybody fell. Okay, he was going to go investigate. But of course, now it's his cousin, so now it's piqued his interest even more. So my brother and mother and father came back to the house, and they were going to go down to the hospital. And my cousin and the recruit, they picked up my blood trail. How crazy icky is that? My own cousin's following. Imagine what he felt. He's following his own cousin's blood trail to like an animal, trying to find where he went. And then he found where I fell. And all my blood was down in the hole in my cell phone. And then he got my parents and brother before I fell, because they were all confused. Again, it just disappears, this thing. Now it's got a guardrail and it's all cleaned out. But I after the fact, I went with my father and I said, "How did I not know? I don't go down there much, but how did I not know like this area was?" And in June, we went down there. It was all gone again. The trees and the brush all covered over it. So you couldn't see there was a culvert there. So that's why I never knew. And so I didn't go down there much, but I didn't know. So anyway, now it's all cleared and there's a culvert. There's a guardrails, protected and stuff. But that's, so anyway, he came up and met my mom and, and told him it's a lot worse. Yeah, it's bad. It's a lot worse. Where he fell, it's bad. And then he called the hospital, let them know, like, this guy really, really fell.
Right.
And
so they were waiting for you.
yeah, my parents, they were there till 2 or 3 in the morning, and they still had no idea how bad I was hurt. They sent them home and said, "We still don't know." And then they on Monday, my poor sister-in-law, my brother were there, and she was holding my hand, and the pain was so bad I almost broke her hand. They had to peel my finger. I squeezed her hand so hard, and she's a small girl, and I almost broke her hand from the pain. And then I wasn't going to make it, so they had to induce a coma. My aunt got mad at me. Sadly, she has passed away, but whenever I did a speech, she took me to Newark, New Jersey, to be on a TV show and all that about this. And she said, you did a wonderful job. She said, it's amazing how you talk, and you're really good at it for never doing it before in your life, other than coaching, but that's a different thing. And she's like, you're so, she says, but I'm so mad at you. And I'm like, well, what are you mad at? And she says, you downplay your pain. She says, she says, the reason why you were put in a coma, there's no medicine ever made, a pain med that would take care of your pain strong enough to take care of the amount of pain you were in. And the other people have lived with these kind of, like, so they would understand, like, the pain. And so she's like, so anyway, they induced me in a coma. And then I had to, twice they told my brother, they called him up and told him to get a grave, that I wasn't going to make it.
Dear God. Well, this just shows that when it's your time, it's your time. But when it's not, it's not. And I've seen people. What's that guy that was the runner guy, like back in the 80s, and he was like had these books on being healthy, and then he just what'd he do? Out of the blue, drop dead. And then you have someone else. All the odds are all against them, and then here you are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's. I mean, so you're saying the pain was so great, that's why they sometimes induce. At
least that's what I was told, and I was going to make it. I of course, it's hard to wrap my head around the pain I was in, but I wasn't, so anyway, that's what happened.
It
so
allowed your body.
It allowed, and the crazy thing, what people can't believe it, is I had no surgeries. The only thing I had done to me, I only had a vena cava filter put in my main vein or main artery to keep blood clots, because when I was in a coma, it keeps blood clots from forming. But I had no surgeries. Now I have 2 crushed vertebrae, and I'm 2 inches shorter since my accident. And I've gotten older, but then I was 2 inches shorter soon after my accident because 2 of my vertebrae were crushed. But
they didn't use it. They didn't do anything back there.
They didn't do anything. But here,
what about your head? Did they stitch that up?
My head, it's all stitched. Yeah, they stitched. Oh, I had blood transfusions and stuff like that.
Okay, and
that saved my life too. And then but they induced the coma, and then with all those broken ribs when I get, So anyway, the coma was that's a whole nother thing, but that was a whole different world, and that's in the book and stuff like that. But that was an incredible world there at the coma.
How long did you stay in the hospital to recover?
Well, that's the crazy thing too, is all that damage. I think I was in and out of that. Now they get you out of the hospital. For me, I wasn't sick. I was just hurt all over. And
right.
they don't want you to get sick now on top of everything else. I think there was issues. I had a rash. I got affected with this one pain med they gave me. I turned into a strawberry. I mean, it was bad. I was itching and stuff, and it wasn't
allergic
perfect.
reaction.
Yeah, I had a bad allergic reaction to something, and it was bad. But I was thinking it was, I don't know. I think I went on the 15th, and I was to rehab on I think like the 1st, December 1st. I was 15 days or whatever. And
wow.
Well, what happened was I came out of a coma, and then I breathed, and I had to wear a big turtle shell thing, and my neck brace was always on. And I had to wear that when I got out of bed. When I was in bed, I didn't need to wear the one brace. And they would put it on, and that killed me. Boy, they would roll me on my ribs.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I got up and walked with a walker like a few feet. And they're like, okay, rehab, And then I went to a different rehab. Since then, I learned about brain injury. I had a brain injury, but I could tell them the day after a while. I figured it out, and because. And all that, I was very intelligent when I fell, and I'm not, but so I was like a 4.0 student, and I've lost some intelligence, but I started at a high level. So that's what allows me to be functionable. I believe is, you know what I mean? I've lost some things. So I function at a high level still because I was at a high level when I started, and I have little things.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I didn't go the brain injury route to rehab. I had many orthopedic, and I was able to tell them about. But I was doing things brain injury wise, like after I got out of the hospital and rehab, and I was like, I started to get a little depressed. I was like, because I didn't. But then I found the brain injury group, and I went there, and I'm like, oh, look, it's people like me, and like.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know they had that. That's great. Did they do like? Some people do flashcards or things to help you remember stuff, just to jog your memory, get your brain working.
Yeah. Well, what happened to me, one of the things that was good for me, which was bad for me, but good for me, is I had to go back to work. So I
Oh,
ended up so I ended
that's
up going
that
to the
ain't
gas.
good.
I went to the gas station and I started working and just the repetitive stuff. You know, a a really severe brain injury will can still learn. You still can learn if it's repetitive,
Mm,
but it's so bad that they don't make great strides. But anybody with a brain injury can learn. It's just repetitive. Like I eventually I got to the point where I could help with the deposits, and I always use a generic bank statement. And I
mhm.
learned I don't own the gas station. My brother and sister own. My father used to own it. My brother and sister own it. So, but I used to make deposits, and I learned the account number to the station. That's because I
Yeah,
used it every day, or every
yeah,
when I
sure.
did it. So repetitive. So that was so it was bad. It was hard because I had to get up with like most people would have took longer to go do this stuff. I had no choice. I just so in one way it was okay. I was still hurt. I really shouldn't be doing this, but on the other way, it got my butt. Like when I
Got
went to
you on your feet, kind of force you back into the game.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like when I went to
quicker.
rehab,
Wow.
my physical therapist made a goal of me of walking with a walker 100 feet, like 2 months from now. When I went there, they rolled me in. I was in
Mm.
bad shape. They rolled me in. So the next day, I went to physical therapy. I walked 300 feet with a walker the first day. And I got back to him. Of course, he walked with me, and he goes, you ruined it." I'm like, "What?" He goes, that was my goal for 3 months from now, or 3 months from now, and you
Oh,
did it in the first day." And I'm like, "Well, let's get this stuff done and over with. Let's go home. Let's get, So that's,
wow.
but that was me, But I should have took longer. I got out too soon. I kind of got myself out, and looking back now, I should have took a little longer and got a little more help that way, you
So
know.
so let me ask you, Jim. I mean, obviously, your will, your drive to like from the walking, getting on the log, all this like painful every each step, that was your will. And then of course, when you had that conversation with God, that's when you were like, okay, I guess you need my help. And then, of course, you saw your kids. So you're like, wow. And you also knew, wow, this is so amazing. This is what I get. I get to be with them one day. But if you've got a mission for me, did that help your drive knowing that you had this mission for
Well,
God?
here's the key. So in rehab, this is the whole key. Now, got to remember. So I did tell my parents. I told my family members one at a time in the hospital. I met God, and I told them about a log that had a lot of blood. I said I stopped at a log, and they did go that next morning and saw where I fell, and there was a lot of blood at the log. This log.
Yeah.
So they kind of believed me. Okay, they were like, okay, but they always said, like my mom said, before you claim to meet God or Jesus, whatever you want to say, you better be sure. And when I was in that hospital, I was 99% sure. But come on, I hit my head. I could have been hallucinating. There's stuff. There's so I had a little bit of doubt in myself. Either way, I'm here. So, and then I said no, but I met God at this log, and it was dark, and then it got so bright, and I told him about this log. I described it. So while I was in the hospital, there's this great Karen Bridge website. You can create, I don't know if people heard of it, it's a nonprofit. You can create pages. You can create a little website within their website of
Mm.
somebody that's sick, cancer, anything. And people join it, and they get notified by email that something got updated. And instead of calling Sam's house. Hey, how's Joe? How's Joe? It's a way to people to stay communicated. So my niece Genesis found out about this at work, and my brother and sister-in-law ran the page. Sorry, and they
Mhm.
ended up. There were some pictures of where I fell on the page, just to
Yeah.
show people like this is where
Yes.
he got hurt, just so they can understand.
Yeah.
Because the joke is, and I know I fell up a road. I mean, me
It's
and my kid,
14
me,
feet
me,
below. I mean, it was a huge incline.
yeah, and me and my kids are in Walmart, and we were walking in Walmart together one day, and I said, what are the odds? And I joke around about it. I said, what are the odds of, how many people you think up here have a dad that fell off the road? Of all things, your dad fell off the road, and I did, and so anyway, so they did this Karen Bridge website, and So I was in rehab and they had a computer for patients, computers, and I was in a wheelchair. And my brother's sister-in-law said, "Hey, you want to go see your website?" And people were all over the world leaving messages, "Get well, Jimmy, get well, Bubba," and all this stuff. And so I didn't know if I was ready, but I was like, okay, yeah, okay. So we went and they were reading my neighbor. And the crazy thing is, my neighbor, without knowing I met God, put a God message in it that
Really?
God must have put me on her doorstep and all that. It's
Wow.
incredible, right? So then these incredible things and all that, right? And then my brother's like, "Hey, do you want to see where you fell?" And I don't know if I was ready, but I was like, okay, I don't know when I'll be ready.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be
So,
difficult.
so he showed me the picture of where I fell. And in this picture, this exact picture, the day after I fell, is the log that I met God at, that I described straight as exactly the log I described out of my coma is the log in that picture that I met God at that had a lot of blood.
It's amazing. So
So
you
how would
literally logged into the divine.
yeah. So how
That's a
could
bad
I
joke,
how
sorry.
could I describe the log in the dark?
Oh my
You know,
gosh,
I
that
mean, like
is
everybody would know
crazy.
they're laying on a log. Everybody, we all can lay on a log in the dark and be like, "Yeah, we're laying on a log." But can you describe the
Oh
log?
no,
I
that's
described the log I described
wow.
out of a coma that I met God at that was in the dark. And if it was dark, how could I describe it? And oh, by the way, there's no traffic lights. There was no street lights. There was no car lights. Because if a car went by, they would have helped me. Chances are they
Right.
would have seen me.
Yes.
There's no lights. It was foggy, so there's no moonlight. So what other light
Hopefully
could there
they
be?
fixed that and they have gotten it lit up and done things and
Yeah,
hopefully they have, because that is, and you know what's really, uh, it's while there's so many places like that, there's places around when you're talking to them like that I can think of around my neighborhood. It could have
yeah.
happened to anyone. I know it happened
Anyone.
to you, but I mean,
Yeah,
there's places like this that I'm thinking because you ever drive by or walk by, you're like, they need to fix that. They need to. There's a
yeah,
lot of places like that, and
yeah,
people always say, "Be careful," and you go,
yeah,
"Yeah." Because there are lots of places
yeah.
like that,
Well, I
dude.
just want to wrap up with the prayer to Bez. Like, here I am,
Yeah,
God. What do I do for you? Well, there
yeah.
you go. This is what I do for God now. This is what I do. That's
Talk to people about
all along I was wondering what I was going to do, and I prayed and prayed and prayed, and here it is. You
well,
know,
you're letting people know, and then so you feel like your mission is just to let people know that there is more to hear
yeah,
than we do know, and that there
yeah.
is something bigger at play.
Yeah, that's the here I am, and this is what it is, and yeah, I'm here, and there's a bigger divine in us, and I'm just share whatever whoever and I don't push it on anybody. No, I don't say anything to anybody. I don't say, hey, I wrote a book or anything like that. It all happens naturally. All happens naturally.
Well, you should tell everybody you've got a book because it is amazing. I mean, your story, I have heard so many, and of course, every near death experience story is different, including mine. But yours is amazing, and even your cognitions. I still want to talk about your cognitions. Maybe we can do a special episode, a live episode where you talk about the spiritual episode. People can ask questions, how it changed you from a grape to maybe a watermelon spiritually.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know
yeah,
because you say
that's
grape.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Grape to a watermelon. That's about right. Yeah, that's
And
about right.
to talk about because we didn't even get into the whole like how did it change you, how you saw the world, how so would you be open to doing an episode where we talked about like how it changed you and then get we could do a live thing where people would ask questions what they had for you and then some of my channel members I can get them to write questions what they want to know and then we could do a whole segment just on the after effects like how you change what you experience and that kind of a
Sure,
thing.
that'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, I talk to
I think that would be good because there's still so much this first part was huge, but there's
yeah.
still so much on the last part that your spirituality, how did it change you? How did you, how do you look at the world now? Where were you? Where do you think I mean, we're all a work in progress and we're still
Right,
going, but just
right.
to say from the grape to where you are now, I mean, I didn't expect when I had people on my channel, I have to giggle because it was not my reality, but I just did this to be of service, but I didn't realize that it would affect me too. I don't know why, but like the whole UFO thing, it opened up my world, and now I'm seeing UFOs. Like, I think that's funny because that was just like, okay, that was not in my radar. It would be
Right.
like me talking about Bigfoot, me seeing Bigfoot, which I haven't seen yet. But
Right.
to me, that's it lets you know, well, your world is a little bit bigger, right, from experiencing things. But yeah, we could definitely do that. And I want everybody to buy your book, buy Jim Bubba Bay's book. It is The Miracle of Hammertown Road, One Man's Fall and Salvation. And what you went through, I think it shows also the human will, and also combined with the creator, because you're like, well, I guess I got a plan. He wants me to do something. There's a plan here. But your will, it took both of you. And I think people forget, thinking, oh, that I'm not, I'm all for divine intervention. I think it's great. But we have free will. So it's our will with God's will, the way I see it, because we have a say in things. And your will was strong, man. I mean,
Yeah,
you
it was.
kept going like the ever ready bunny. I mean,
yeah, it was.
you did
thank
that.
God I was a landscaper. That saved my life too, because I built rock walls and muscular and stuff like that helped me up the hill. But I do want to say one thing real quick is I was a shy guy before all this. Unless you knew me, I could talk your ear off once you knew me, but to get to know you. But to me, you give a give and take. I got chronic pain from my accident, but you always get a gift when you have a divine intervention, and mine's the gift of sociability. That's what I call it.
Oh, well,
Because I talk to everybody and anybody.
I just wish I could give you a big hug. I think you are such a delight. And what I love is that you're showing your heart. Oh, you're so welcome. You show your heart, you show your truth. And that's all we can do. I mean, not that we don't all have the answer, but we can just speak our truth, and it takes courage. So it's taking courage that you're doing this.
It's not about me. So, it's
well, it's a little bit about you, but it's about all of us, and realizing, that we are a part of something bigger, and that and this life is so precious. We should enjoy it. So you have been such a joy, and I look forward to doing the live segment so we can get, because it's going to be, I know you had to tell your story and it was amazing. I'm still kind of like blown away by the whole thing, but there is so much spiritual truth that I want to get into with you as well, of what you've learned, because we talked about some of it beforehand. So we'll set that up, and thank you so much.
And you could say the grape to the watermelon.
I don't know. That doesn't sound very spiritual, but okay.
That's the truth.
Okay, well, at least it wasn't a seed or an acorn. It was.
It was a little.
It's a little bit bigger. So.
Yeah. Right.
Well, look, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Please subscribe, like, and make comments, and support this channel by becoming a member. Thank you for your continued support.